House. We've got quite a gathering of former Trump employees, but good evening and thanks for being with us. I just wonder, first of all, did you ever think Trump would get this close to a second term?
I didn't. He shouldn't have, and I think it's a responsibility of the Republican Party and a lot of people in it who brought him back from the political dead. And if he's elected, it's another price we're going to pay for the damage he does to us in a second term.
Do you see more trouble if he loses or loses closely?
Look, I think his script is already written. I predict instead of waiting until 2 or 3 in the morning, he'll come on at 9 or 10 East Coast time tonight and say the election's being stolen from us, just to lay the groundwork. He made a mistake by waiting too long in 2020. Just let's all get this straight. There are winners and losers in the world. Donald Trump is a winner, therefore he can't lose. Therefore, if he is losing, it was stolen. That's how it works.
Ambassador, your relationship and how volatile it has been with Donald Trump.
You're going to play the most recent quotes again, aren't you?
I am, actually. I'm going to ask you about, his recent tweet that he put out about you. And he was very, he insulted you. But one of the things he said was that, whenever he took you into a room, it would frighten the likes of Vladimir Putin. It would frighten Kim Jong-un because they thought that you were frankly going to attack them. And it worked for him. But he did say some nasty things about you. He also said that, every time you'd see a $15 drone, you'd want to shoot it out of the sky and cause all sorts of wars.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to find the guy who hired Bolton and get rid of him. This is classic Donald Trump. It's a juvenile approach, and it's not just me. He does it to anybody who crosses him, and it's one of the reasons he's really not fit to be president. He doesn't understand issues, so he turns things into personal attacks. And in the kind of politics we have in the United States today, that kind of divisiveness is, I think, very harmful.
What about some of those issues? And he talks about Ukraine and sorting it out in 24 hours. And how does that actually happen in a real world?
Well, it won't. But I think it's a mark of how much trouble Ukraine is in if Trump wins. I think that his natural affinity for Putin, whom he thinks he has a good relationship with, will work against Ukraine. In fact, I think it's Putin who believes that Trump is an easy mark and is prepared to take advantage of him in Ukraine and in other cases as well.
I was with Kevin Rudd last night, former Prime Minister of Australia, now the ambassador here for Australia. He said that China, and he has, a working relationship with the Chinese, are more concerned about a second Trump presidency because, frankly, they can't deal with unpredictability, and they'd rather see a Harris in the White House.
I don't think that's right. I think Xi Jinping also thinks Trump is an easy mark. And my prediction is this: if Trump wins, the day after the election, Xi will call him up and he'll say, Donald, I'm so glad you won. That guy Biden messed everything up. We've now got so many problems. Let's you and I get together. We can fix them. Let's negotiate the biggest trade deal in history, which is what we were trying to do before. Trump will be on his way to China. I will tell you a quick story. When we were with Prime Minister May in 2018, she had us out to Chequers, and we had a conversation at a lunch with the president, his aides, and Prime Minister and her aides. And Trump was telling her about his trip to China in 2017. And he said, do you know the Chinese gave me the biggest welcome they have ever given anybody in all history?
And yet the Trump administration's policies on China were far tougher than the Obama administration's policies.
Over him kicking and screaming in many respects. He sees the relationship as fundamentally a trade relationship. And if he could get that biggest trade deal in history,
he's talking about massive tariffs on China.
Well, he believes that China cost him the election in 2020. Of course, he didn't lose the election, but if he had lost the election, it would have been because of the COVID virus coming out of China. And he thinks they're responsible for it, and that's one reason he's very tough. But I guarantee you the prospect of negotiating a huge deal, if Xi puts it on the table, will be irresistible.
Ambassador, I'm keen to know whether of America's other adversaries, who you think they would prefer to win. I mean, the Russians would prefer Trump to win, presumably because of what would happen in Ukraine?
Right. I think that's probably right. I think Iran has a somewhat different view of Trump.
Iran I was going to come to. They would prefer Harris, given...
That's right. But I think the main effort by all of our adversaries, the interference they're currently undertaking in our election, while it may be designed to help particular candidates, is really designed to undermine Americans' faith in the legitimacy of our institutions, to reduce the credibility of the electoral process, to sow dissension. And you can do that very well by openly advocating somebody's election. It just irritates the other people. This is, I think, a very dangerous problem.
Ambassador, may I ask, Ambassador, is there anything you've seen at all in Kamala Harris's record, either in the Senate or as Vice President, gives you any confidence whatsoever that she will be an effective foreign policy president?
No, look, when she became vice president, she had effectively no foreign policy experience. She's sat through nearly 4 years of National Security Council meetings, intelligence briefings. She's met with many foreign officials. There is no evidence, I guess this is in part a plus for the Biden administration because there are so few leaks, but no evidence she ever took a strong stand on any national security issue. She never carved out an area to make her own. She never seemed to have much interest in it. I mean, I think the best prediction you can make in the first, let's say, year of her term would be it'll look a lot like the Biden administration, but not because of her particular interest in any given area.
Ambassador, we're going to come back to you in a moment, but we've just got some developing breaking news in the last few minutes. Now, as you can see on the screen below us, that there is about 35 minutes left, or so we were told, that the polls in Georgia would close at 7 p.m. here, Eastern Standard Time, which is 12 midnight in the UK. But we've got an update, and we're being told that the final polls in Georgia will now not close until 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So 10 polling stations have extended their hours due to the disruption from non-credible bomb threats, and therefore they have now extended the time for the polls to close until 7:45 p.m. So an extra 45 minutes. We have seen these threats throughout the day, haven't we, and heard about these potential threats.
We have, yeah. And I think it's the story we haven't yet discussed, the extent to which there could be threats and violence. And, you know, let's hope not. But and I was actually struck by the fact that Donald Trump said in a bit that we didn't play, but that same clip that we played earlier on, he said that his supporters are not violent and that there would be no violence. Let's hope he's right on that. But clearly, in Washington, in every state around the country, there are people very anxious, law enforcement very anxious about how all this could play out.
But I'm really glad that they did extend the time and they did not disenfranchise voters who are really committed to making sure that their voice is heard through voting. So good on them in Georgia.
We've got a couple of more minutes with you. I just want to pick up on Iran and the question of Iran. What do you think Netanyahu will do? Wants to do, and what difference would a Trump government make to that, do you think?
Well, I can tell you what I think he ought to do, which is destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program. You may have heard earlier today he fired the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, and put in the former foreign minister to get a government that's ready to do that. I think the period between the election and our inauguration on January the 20th, transition period now really will be particularly interesting. I think a lot of foreign countries may try and test us during that period, but I think in the Middle East in particular, this may be an opportunity for Israel to take this action against Iran, which, by the way...
An opportunity because Trump would turn a blind eye to it.
Well, he's effectively said, I want this conflict over by January the 20th, which is he'd like to do that in Ukraine, too. Not because he knows how he wants to end them or what his objectives are. He just wants them off the table.
It could be a much worse conflict by January the 20th.
Let me tell you, there will never be peace and security in the Middle East as long as Iran is pursuing nuclear weapons.
I mean, do you believe that period you talk about, that 76 days between, you know, when the president-elect is announced and inauguration, is a dangerous period because it's sort of a lame duck period for the U.S. president?
Yeah, look, there's only one president at a time. Americans are clear about that, but that's easier said than done particularly as we get close to January the 20th. I think there's also a risk, frankly, whether it's Trump or Harris who wins, that immediately after January 20th, they will try and test the new president whether it's Russia or China, Iran, North Korea, or others, I think that's going to be a dangerous period as well.
Can we ask who you voted for? I mean, you clearly couldn't have voted for didn't want to vote for either.
Certainly not. I wrote in Dick Cheney in 2020, but since he backed Kamala Harris this time, I had to find somebody else. So I decided today I wrote in Mike Pence, because he's the one constitutional officer in the executive branch who did his duty on January the 6th.
Yeah.
I wonder what he's thinking tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he voted for Trump. I don't think he voted for Harris. Maybe I don't know what he did. Maybe he wrote my name in. Look,
we've only got a minute left. Just on a personal level, you joined Trump in, I think it was April 2018, I think, when I was here for a year. And I just wonder why you took the job. You must have known him.
Yes, I did.
So why did you take the job?
Look, I've been called a lot of things, rarely naive. I believed that, like every president before him, Trump would be disciplined by the gravity of his responsibilities in the national security space, by the importance of the decisions he had to make, and that, he would make the decisions, but we'd have a disciplined process and good policy. And I was wrong on that. Nothing disciplines Donald Trump.
At least one of your colleagues described him as fascist. Do you think he's fascist?
I wouldn't fight over that word. I think you have to have a philosophy to be a fascist, and he can't do philosophy. He can't do policy. It's all about Donald Trump. It's transactional, ad hoc, episodic. He's an aberration in American politics. 4 more years will be trouble for us.
Ambassador, if we do have a Trump 2.0, how do you view his foreign policy?
Well, I think it will be as erratic and unpredictable as in the first term. He's made a lot of claims. Russia never would have invaded Ukraine if I were president. Iran wouldn't have attacked through its terrorist proxies. Those statements are not provable or disprovable. He just doesn't want to be Biden. And I think his real preoccupation would be domestic. I think he wants retribution against his enemies.
Do you?
And
you think that will happen?
Yeah, I absolutely think it will happen.
And what form will that take?
Well, I think the main pressure points will be the Justice Department and the Defense Department. I think he's got a long list of people he wants to prosecute.
Including Biden's?
It could be. Look, this is everything to Trump is personal. And I think he's very serious when he says that he wants to use the Justice Department in the way he says it was used against him. I think erroneously, but that's how he sees it, and that's what he's going to do. He thinks he's been given leave by the conduct of prior administrations, starting with the Obama administration and the Russia collusion argument.
Can I just ask about the impact of his tariffs that you think will have in this country and abroad?
Well, if he gets what he says he wants, which is 10% or maybe it's 50% now, duties on all imports, it will crash the economy. There's no doubt about it. Whether he really has the authority to impose tariffs under existing legislation is open to question. It'll certainly be litigated. But Trump has a very simplistic view of international economics. Trade surplus is good, trade deficit's bad, and he doesn't really understand why. But he thinks he understands it because it looks like dollars and cents.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Well, thank you indeed. Because we're going to talk to Lewis Goodall at the screen. But appreciate your time this evening.
Glad to be with you.
And just quick, which way do you think it'll go?
I don't have any idea, and honestly, I don't think anybody does at this point. We'll see the real results, and hopefully it'll be wrapped up soon. I think one of them wins clearly. I hope that's the result, because if it does, it'll make the transition a lot easier.
Could be a Mike Pence majority.
I was going to say it won't be Mike Pence.
I don't see a sudden late swing to Mike Pence.
I don't see a way of coming at this point.
Where is Mike Pence? Where is Mike Pence? We need to get him on. Thank you very much indeed.